He never should have kissed me. That's the kind of thought that creeps in late at night, when silence grows loud enough to suffocate. And yet, when his lips brushed mine in the shadow of a half-empty hospital parking lot, I realized life would never return to the predictable path I had so carefully carved for myself. I wasn't looking for love when I came to America. Hell, I wasn't even looking for anything more than survival. Graduate school was supposed to be my salvation. The clean slate that promised I could outrun the ghost of my past life and the narrow eyes of a hometown that never forgave. Instead, I stumbled into a labyrinth of choices, betrayals, and that inconveniently dangerous thing called love. The Dr. Daniel was everything my mother would have prayed for me to be. Stoic, brilliant, compassionate in a way that seeped past the sterility of hospital walls. His presence was like a bandage pressed against a wound I didn't want to admit was bleeding. Yet, right when I thought my heart had settled on the steady warmth of him, there was another, Ethan. The kind of college boy you'd want to hate if only he didn't make it so damn impossible. He laughed too loud, clung too close, and carried this infuriating certainty that I belonged to him, even before I believed I belonged to anyone at all. He wasn't polished like Daniel. He wasn't careful. Ethan was chaos messy, reckless, alive, and he was staring at me like the whole universe had given him a secret. That love wasn't about choosing safety. It was about risking destruction. I suppose that's how it always begins, the collision between who we think we should love and who makes us feel alive. The first time I met Daniel, it was an accident in every sense of the word. I had fainted in the library, exhaustion gnawing at my bones after too many sleepless nights juggling research and 2 part-time jobs. When I woke, fluorescent lights burned my vision, and there he was, tall, clean-shaven, the kind of man who seemed to have walked out of a medical drama on TV. "You're awake," he said, his voice calm, as though he'd done this 1,000 times before. "I'm fine," I lied, trying to push myself upright. "You're not," he countered. "You're dehydrated. You've been pushing too hard." There was no judgment in his tone, just quiet certainty. He pressed a bottle of water into my hand, his touch steady but not invasive. That steadiness lingered with me long after I left the hospital. But then there was Ethan. He came barreling into my life like a storm that refused to be ignored. He was a freshman, reckless and curious, who sat beside me in a campus cafe one morning with a grin too bright for the dim November sky. "You're always here," he said, sliding his coffee across the table toward me as if we'd known each other for years. I glanced up, frowning. And I decided today's the day I introduce myself," he replied. "I'm Ethan, and you're the guy who never smiles." His persistence was maddening. Every time I tried to escape into the solitude of my studies, he appeared. In the library, at the cafe outside my apartment building. Always grinning, always demanding pieces of me I wasn't ready to give. But beneath that insistence, there was sincerity. He wasn't chasing me out of curiosity or conquest. No, looked at me like he already knew the cracks in my armor and wasn't afraid of them. Weeks bled into months, and I found myself split down the middle. Daniel offered me calm, a sense of direction, like a lighthouse guiding a lost ship. He'd ask about my family back home, about my dreams beyond school. His concern felt like a shelter, something I could lean on without fear of collapsing. But Ethan was fire. With him, nothing was predictable. He dragged me into midnight adventures, convinced me to try things I'd sworn I'd never dare. He taught me that laughter could be just as healing as medicine, that sometimes love wasn't quiet but loud and unapologetic. The cruelest part was how much I needed both. And all the while, society's shadow stretched over me, whispering that what I wanted was wrong, that I couldn't possibly expect to have a future with either of them without destroying the fragile acceptance I'd worked so hard to build in this foreign land. But love doesn't ask permission. One evening, caught between Ethan's reckless embrace and Daniel's steady gaze, I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living in the cracks of other people's expectations. My heart wasn't asking me to choose between safety and chaos. It was asking me to be brave enough to live at all. That was how the war began, the one between my loyalty, my fear, and my longing. And wars, no matter how they start, always demand a sacrifice. The trouble with falling for two people at once is that the heart doesn't care about rules. It doesn't care about timing or reason or how the world is watching. The heart is selfish, it wants what it wants, even if it means tearing you apart in the process. I learned this the night I stood outside Daniel's apartment with Ethan at my heels, demanding to know why I couldn't just pick one of them and be done. Because it isn't that simple, I said, my voice raw. It is, Ethan snapped back. You just don't want to admit it. You're scared. You're hiding behind him because it feels safe. He meant Daniel, of course. The man whose door I was staring at, unable to knock. The man who had unknowingly become the axis on which my confusion spun. Don't talk about him like that, I muttered. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not supposed to point out that you're stringing us both along while pretending you're the victim here? The words hit harder than I expected, mostly because some part of me believed him. Inside the apartment, Daniel was probably reviewing charts, maybe sipping coffee in the dim light of his kitchen. I wanted to see him, to hear his steady voice remind me that I wasn't alone in this foreign city. But Ethan's presence behind me was like gravity pulling me backward, refusing to let go. Go home, Ethan, I whispered. No, he said firmly. Not until you tell me why. Why you keep letting me chase you if you don't want me. His eyes burned, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. Daniel opened the door then, as if summoned by the storm brewing outside. His gaze flicked from me to Ethan, and though his expression barely shifted, I saw the flicker of realization in his eyes. I didn't know you had company, he said, voice carefully neutral. Ethan's smirk was sharp enough to cut glass. Oh, I'm not company. I'm the guy he kisses when you're too busy saving lives. My stomach dropped. Ethan, stop. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Daniel's composure faltered, just for a second, like a crack in a glass window. I see, he murmured, and for the first time, he looked at me not like a patient, not like someone he wanted to protect, but like a man betrayed. That night unraveled everything. Daniel stopped answering my calls, retreating into the sterile safety of his hospital shifts. Ethan, meanwhile, refused to leave me alone, showing up at my classes, slipping notes into my textbooks, pushing for answers I wasn't ready to give. You can't have both, my friend Lisa told me one evening over cheap takeout. She was one of the few people who knew the whole mess. You'll end up with neither if you keep dragging this out. I don't want both, I argued. I don't know who I am without them. And there it was, the truth I hadn't wanted to face. America was supposed to be the place I rebuilt myself, but instead, I had built myself around them. Around Daniel's quiet strength. Around Ethan's reckless fire. Without them, I was terrified I'd vanish. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Daniel finally agreed to meet me at a small diner near the hospital. His eyes were tired, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, but his voice was steady when he spoke. This can't continue, he said, stirring his coffee without looking at me. You're young, confused, still trying to figure out who you are. And I'm not someone you should figure that out with. My chest tightened. You're saying you don't want me. I'm saying I want you too much, he replied quietly. And it's not fair to either of us if I keep pretending I don't see what's happening with him. Ethan. Always Ethan. The truth lodged in my throat. Daniel wasn't pushing me away because he didn't care. He was doing it because he cared too much. Because he thought letting me go was the kinder choice. But kindness can feel like cruelty when your heart is begging to stay. Ethan found me sitting on the steps of the library later that night, my eyes red from tears I refused to admit I shed. He ended it, didn't he? Ethan asked softly. I didn't answer. He sat down beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Good. He should have done it sooner. Now you can stop torturing yourself and start choosing someone who actually fights for you. I turned to him, searching his face for the arrogance I expected. But there was none. Just vulnerability. Just a boy who had given me his heart long before I realized it. You make it sound so easy, I whispered. "It is easy," he said simply. "You just don't trust yourself enough to believe it." And maybe he was right. Maybe I'd been clinging to Daniel because he represented the version of myself I wanted to become, stable, respected, worthy. But Ethan saw me as I was, flawed, afraid, and still worth loving. The next few weeks blurred into something raw and tender. Ethan pulled me out of the dark places I didn't even realize I'd been hiding in. He made me laugh when I thought I couldn't, dragged me to parties, late-night diners, and once even onto the roof of our dorm just to watch the stars. But Daniel wasn't gone. Not really. I still caught glimpses of him at the hospital, our eyes meeting across sterile hallways, heavy with everything left unsaid. Every time, my chest tightened with guilt, longing, and something that felt dangerously close to regret. Because the truth was, even as Ethan stitched joy back into my days, a part of me still ached for the quiet safety of Daniel's arms. And that ache was the secret that threatened to undo everything. One evening, after Ethan and I had spent the afternoon tangled up in each other's laughter and warmth, he turned serious. "You're still thinking about him," he said. I froze. "It's okay," Ethan continued, softer now. "I know. I've always known. But I need you to be honest with me. Am I just the distraction while you wait for him to come back?" The question sliced through me. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to swear that he was the only one. But the truth sat heavy on my tongue, and silence became my betrayal. Ethan stood, his jaw tight. "That's what I thought." And then he walked away, leaving me stranded in the wreckage of my own cowardice. I had thought love was about choosing who made you feel safe. Then I thought love was about choosing who made you feel alive. But maybe love wasn't about choosing at all. Maybe it was about daring to hold both truths at once. The problem was, the world doesn't let you hold both. The world demands a decision. And the longer I delayed mine, the more certain I became that I would lose them both. The silence after Ethan left me that night was louder than any argument we had ever had. His absence clung to me like smoke, seeping into every corner of my apartment. For days, I waited for him to reappear at the library, outside my classes, in the cafe where he always accidentally bumped into me. But he didn't. Instead, the city felt emptier. Even the air tasted different without his laughter in it. And then there was Daniel. It had been weeks since the diner, weeks since he told me I was too young, too lost, too everything he couldn't handle. But Daniel was never really gone. I would see him on campus when he volunteered at the student clinic, or at the hospital where I sometimes worked shifts to help with rent. Our eyes always found each other in those moments, like magnets drawn together despite every barrier between them. One night, after a long shift, I saw him leaving the hospital parking lot. I should have turned away. Instead, I found myself calling out his name. "Daniel." He paused, keys in hand, his face shadowed by exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here this late." "I needed to see you," I confessed. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that sounded like surrender. "And what good would that do either of us?" But I couldn't stop. I stepped closer, rain beginning to mist in the cold air. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to stop wanting you." His jaw tightened, his eyes softening in a way that betrayed the calm mask he always wore. "You think I don't feel the same? That it's easy for me to walk away?" The rain grew heavier, soaking into our clothes, but neither of us moved. My chest burned with the ache of everything we had left unsaid. And then, for the second time, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle this time. It was desperate, a collision of hunger and restraint breaking all at once. My hands trembled against his chest, and for a fleeting moment, the world outside the rain ceased to exist. But when he pulled away, his expression wasn't joy. It was pain. "This is why I can't see you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Because every time I do, I forget all the reasons I should stay away." He left me there, drenched and shaking, the ghost of his kiss lingering like a wound I couldn't stop pressing. Days blurred together, each one heavier than the last. Ethan still hadn't come back. Daniel had kissed me, but then vanished again behind his walls of duty and self-control. I was caught in a love triangle that felt less like romance and more like punishment. Lisa, ever the voice of reason, didn't mince words when she saw me spiraling. "You're destroying yourself," she said bluntly, shoving a mug of tea into my hands. "And for what? Two men who can't even decide if they want to stay." I bristled. "That's not fair." "No," she countered. "What's not fair is you refusing to choose, so they're forced to live in limbo. You're not the only one hurting here." Her words stung, mostly because they were true. I had been so consumed by my own confusion, I hadn't considered how much I was breaking them too. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's wounded stare, Daniel's trembling restraint. My heart felt like it was being torn in opposite directions, and no matter where I turned, I risked losing everything. The breaking point came during a storm. The university lost power. The city soaked in sheets of relentless rain. I found myself running across slick sidewalks, phone buzzing in my pocket. It was Ethan. A single text, "Come outside." Now, I didn't think. I just obeyed. He was waiting for me in the middle of the street, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, his eyes blazing with anger and something deeper. "You kissed him again, didn't you?" he shouted over the storm. The words froze me in place. "How do you—" "I know you," he interrupted, stepping closer. "I know when you've been with him. You look at me like you're somewhere else. Like I'm not enough." My chest constricted. "Ethan, it's not like that. It's exactly like that." His voice cracked, not from rage but from heartbreak. "I've been killing myself trying to prove to you that I can love you better, that I'm the one who's here, fighting for you. And still you run back to him." The rain was merciless, soaking us both, but neither of us moved. His fists trembled at his sides, his body quivering with the force of his emotions. "Why can't you just pick me?" he whispered finally, his voice breaking. I had no answer. My silence was its own confession. Ethan let out a shaky laugh, one that sounded more like surrender. "That's it, isn't it? No matter what I do, you'll never stop running back to him." His eyes met mine one last time, shattered, defiant, and unbearably human before he turned and disappeared into the storm. I stood there until my body went numb. And then, as if the universe was cruel enough to script it, Daniel appeared at the end of the street. He must have been leaving the hospital, his umbrella useless against the heavy downpour. He saw me standing alone, drenched, and without hesitation he rushed forward. "Are you insane?" he demanded, pulling me under his umbrella even as rain cascaded down his own face. "You'll get sick out here." But I barely heard him. My chest was still echoing with Ethan's broken voice, my heart unraveling in the space between them. I turned to Daniel, searching his face for answers I couldn't find in myself. "Tell me what to do," I whispered. "Please, just tell me what to do." For a moment I thought he would. I thought he'd finally take control, finally claim me the way I had wanted him to since the beginning. But Daniel only closed his eyes, his expression carved with sorrow. "I can't make that choice for you." The storm raged on, swallowing us whole. And for the first time I realized the truth. The decision was mine, no one else's. And if I didn't make it soon, I would lose them both forever. The storm passed, but it left my world scattered in pieces I wasn't sure how to put back together. For days, I wandered through campus like a ghost. Ethan's absence carved into me like an open wound. Daniel, though present, kept his distance, his silence as heavy as the rain that had drenched us both that night. I knew I couldn't run anymore. Every time I tried, the weight of my indecision dragged me deeper into a place where neither man could reach me. And maybe Lisa had been right all along. Me silence wasn't just breaking me. It was breaking them too. So I made a choice. It wasn't easy. Love never is. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop hiding behind the idea of, what if, and face the truth of what's right in front of you. I found Ethan in the library of all places. His usual spot, a corner table stacked with papers and books he probably didn't even need, just a cover for avoiding me. When he looked up and saw me standing there, his expression hardened. If you're here to tell me you're sorry again, don't bother. I'm not here to say sorry, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. I'm here to tell you the truth. He raised an eyebrow, but the bitterness in his eyes faltered, just slightly. The truth is, I was scared. Scared of choosing wrong. Scared of losing. Scared of not being enough. I sat down across from him, the table suddenly feeling too small for everything between us. But I realized something. You don't wait for someone because it's easy. You wait because you believe they're worth it. And you've been waiting for me this whole time, even when I didn't deserve it. Ethan's jaw clenched, his hands fidgeting with the corner of a book. And what about him? I swallowed. Daniel will always mean something to me. He showed me kindness when I needed it most. He gave me strength when I didn't have my own. But when I think about the future, when I imagine who I want by my side in the messy, chaotic parts of life, it's always been you. The words hung there, fragile and terrifying. For a moment, I thought he'd laugh, or worse, walk away. But then Ethan's eyes softened, the storm inside him giving way to something warmer. You really mean that? He asked quietly. I nodded, my chest aching with the weight of it. I do. I choose you, Ethan. And just like that, the air shifted. The bitterness melted from his expression, replaced by a smile so bright it felt like the first sunrise after a long, unrelenting night. He didn't hesitate. He leaned across the table and kissed me. Not desperate this time, not reckless, but with a tenderness that made my heart finally rest. Of course, choosing Ethan didn't erase Daniel. It never could. When I met Daniel a week later outside the hospital, the air between us was heavy with the knowledge of what had been lost and what had never truly been ours to begin with. You look happier, he said softly, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. I am, I admitted. Because I stopped running. Daniel nodded, his eyes steady but tinged with sorrow. He's good for you. He makes you laugh in a way I never could. You gave me something too, I said, my throat tightening. You showed me I deserved to be cared for. I'll never forget that. For the first time, Daniel smiled, not the polite, practiced smile of a doctor, but something real, something human. Then that's enough, he whispered. And just like that, the tension between us dissolved. Not into romance, but into something else. Respect, gratitude, closure. As I walked away, I knew he would always be a part of my story, but not the ending. The ending came quietly, without grand declarations or fireworks. Ethan and I sat together by the lake one morning, the world still hazy with dawn. He leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder, and for once, I didn't feel the urge to run or hide. You know, he said, his voice muffled, you're kind of a pain in the ass. I laughed, nudging him lightly. Yeah, but I'm your pain in the ass. Damn right, he murmured, his hand finding mine and lacing our fingers together. We sat like that for a long time, watching the sun climb higher, warming the chill left behind by the storm. And in that quiet, I realized something simple but profound. Love isn't about choosing the safest path or the easiest one. It's about choosing the one that makes you feel alive, even when it scares you. And for me, that choice was Ethan. Daniel moved on eventually, his life consumed by the endless rhythm of the hospital. We crossed paths sometimes, exchanging smiles that spoke of the past but didn't cling to it. He found someone, a nurse, kind and steady, who softened the edges of his solitude. As for me and Ethan, life was far from perfect. We fought, we stumbled, we made mistakes. But through it all, he stayed. We stayed. Because in the end, love isn't about never breaking. It's about finding the person who helps you put the pieces back together when you do. And as I sat there with Ethan's hand in mine, the storm behind us and the sunrise ahead, I knew I had finally found home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.